The iPhone 8 is the first and only smartphone that can shoot video in 4K quality at 60 frames per second, which requires the new high-efficiency HEVC file format, which saves storage space while retaining image quality. Many other phones these days can record in 4K, but only at 30 frames per second. Later in this video, we'll compare the quality of 4K 30 and 60 frames per second video, but first, let's give you a quick rundown of what 4K 60p means. 4K quality means 4K resolution, or more accurately, UHD. 4K has 4 times the pixels of 1080p HD, 8.3 million pixels versus 1.9 million, resulting in much more detailed video. Now, why is 4K 60 such a big deal? First of all, because most high-end cameras can't even do it. Panasonic's GH5 does so at $2,000, and the next cheapest is a Canon at $6,000. There's also a few new action cams, but you're stuck with an ultra-wide lens without stabilization. This is all due to processing power, and most camera companies aren't willing to make extra room in their budget to allow for more powerful processors in their cameras. Our hats go off to Apple for being able to pack such an amazing feat into a compact device, and it's all thanks to the new ultra-powerful A11 Bionic processor. Now let's take a look at what we found when comparing 4K 30 FPS video to 4K 60. We set the iPhone 8 on a tripod and recorded in each setting, both using high-efficiency mode. We later transferred the clips to our Mac and converted them to ProRes LT using Edit Ready software so they'd be compatible with Final Cut 10. Taking a look at this scene, we notice that the 4K 60 video looks darker around the fence and the ground, but the roofs of the houses are extremely blown out compared to the 4K 30 video for some reason. The highlights should have actually gotten darker if the rest of the video got darker, so we can see that in this scene, shooting 4K 60 affected dynamic range. We also saw some extra noise in the higher frame rate video. In this scene, we can see that both clips are similarly bright, but if we crop in, we see a lot more noise in the 4K 60 footage. This scene also shows identical exposure for both clips. Cropping in, we can again see more noise in the 4K 60 footage, and can even see less detail compared to the 4K 30 footage. Now this scene is the most interesting. We kept lighting exactly the same and tapped to focus on the lamp in the center, ensuring exposure was identical in both clips. But the 4K 60 footage turned out way darker. This is due to the shutter speed in ISO. When shooting in 4K 60, shutter speed needs to be twice as fast as in 4K 30, since it's taking twice as many pictures per second. When you increase shutter speed, less light enters the camera system, making the image darker. To compensate, the camera turns up the ISO to increase brightness, but the maximum available is 880. So if the scene is too dark, then the iPhone can't compensate enough to make up the difference. Another drawback is that increased ISO introduces extra noise and decreases detail. For these same reasons, we saw added noise throughout all of our 4K 60 footage. Our conclusion is that shooting in 4K 60 does allow you to get smoother video and slow motion footage, but at the cost of extra noise, worse dynamic range, and less detail, especially in low light. But without looking at footage side by side, most people would be happy with 4K 60, so we recommend shooting in whichever format you prefer. Take note that if you are going to shoot at night or in low light, we would recommend shooting at 30 frames per second. We're working on a couple of videos to show off what you can do with 4K 60, like slowing it down to create beautifully sharp slow-mo video, so make sure to stay tuned.